So we have conference championship weekend coming up, and I thought, what a better way to just start it off. Start predictions from, Friday's games all the way to the last one in the ACC with Florida State and Louisville on Saturday night. Let's talk about the Pac-12 championship now with Oregon versus Washington. To me personally, all of them are exciting. But I would say the one that is like, okay, circle, I need to watch this. I gotta go with the Pac-12 championship one and the SEC one because, the SEC championship game is always great. And I think this one has the biggest implications, and the reason why is because winning, you're in. It is that simple. There's no need to debate it. There's no need to argue. Like, if Oregon wins, they take Washington's spot. And if Washington wins, they don't need to worry about any ideal situation. And this is what probably the playoff committee has hoped for every single year since 2014, where it's like, okay, out of our 5 power conferences, each of the 10 teams that are playing are the top 10 teams in the country, where winning, you're in. And like, this is the ideal scenario where, like, yep, you win, you're in. It is that simple. I think it's a great rematch of Week 7's wonderful game where the Huskies pulled out a win there in the end with a field goal. And if you look at the history, the Ducks have lost the last 2 against Penix. And so there was the one in 2022 where the Huskies went up to Oregon and they got a win on the road. So to me, leaning towards it, it's like the Ducks got to get revenge in this one. I had Oregon this year going 11-1, and then I had Washington going 9-3. I had a Pac-12 championship between the Trojans and the Ducks, and I had the Trojans winning. But to see how off I was for USC is kind of hilarious. To have it be a rematch of the best game of the Pac-12, it's awesome. The Utah versus USC game back in 2022 when the Trojans went into Salt Lake, that was the best game of the Pac-12 season. And so to have that be the rematch for the Pac-12 championship, it's really fitting, and it's awesome that the same thing has happened for 2023. To have that be, the be-all, say-all, winner gets in, it's pretty awesome. Script writers, round of applause to you guys. I've watched a lot of Ducks games this year. I watched when they just dismantled Colorado, the Washington game, of course. I went to the ASU game where they played the Sun Devils and destroyed them in the first quarter alone. And then I watched them handle business against the Utes in Salt Lake, and then the USC win. And so, in turn, Washington, I watched the same games. That night game when they played Arizona State close, and they had that shootout against USC, one of the best games of the year. The Apple Cup, when they, got another great last-second win against the Cougars, the Utah game, and then a few weeks ago when they went to Oregon State and played DJ and, got a great win in the rain. So, both of these teams, great season for both of them. Now, let's get to the gritty part. Who do I think is going to win? I got to lean with the Ducks. I really do. 0 defense. I'm going to throw that out the window right now. Defense is not going to be existent in this game. It's going to be a shootout, hopefully. 38-36 for the Ducks. I think it's going to be a last-second field goal where Huskies are up 36-35. And Bo Nix has to go the length of the field or something, and they kick a last-second field goal and win the game. I think, and I've already said, sound like a broken record, winner gets into the college football playoff. Winner also wins the Heisman. Unless this is something where the Oregon Ducks win, but Bo Nix only has 1 touchdown versus Michael Penix's 5. If the stat isn't like that, I would say the winner quarterback gets to go to New York and put his name on the Heisman. I think with just how the teams and the trajectory of how these teams have played since they last met in Week 7, the Oregon Ducks have just steamrolled everybody, and they've just gotten that much better week in and week out. I got to lean with Bo Nix and those Ducks right now. I think Bucky Irving's going to have a big game too. Franklin, Ferguson, the tight end. That defense, man. So give me the Ducks 38-36 over the Huskies. But then that would probably just drop Washington to 5, and then 5-7, like the 5 seed and the 7 seed Ohio State Buckeyes. I think the Buckeyes and Huskies would play each other in probably the Orange Bowl or the Cotton Bowl or something. That's my pick for that. The last 10 meetings, like to look at the history of it a little bit, Oklahoma State is 7-3 in the last 10 meetings. And the Cowboys have won the last 2, playing in 2022 and also 2021 seasons. If you remember a little bit how the 2022 game ended, Quinn Ewers was the reason why they lost that. He threw 2 critical interceptions. Their late. But that game was a good game. It went back and forth. Personally, I had Texas going 10-2 this season and playing in the Big 12 championship. And ironically enough, I also had Oklahoma State playing in it. The records are different. They are 9-3. I had going 10-2. And so the fact that I predicted this one right since the preseason, I think it's pretty cool. I didn't have Texas having a shot to get to the college football playoff just because it's like, it's Texas. But then at the same time, there's that little part of me where it's like, they could. What I've seen from Oklahoma State in the games that I've watched, like I've seen them beat Oklahoma at home. Big, bedlam rivalry between the Sooners and the Cowboys. And just, they have their number. They always win that game. But then next week when they go and play, the Knights, they just absolutely get wrecked. And the Knights were not ranked, and they just got whacked. And then they struggled against BYU for their last game of the year to get into the championship game. And so I'm a little skeptical about that. But then we roll over to Texas, and the games that I've seen out of Texas, I've seen them beat Bama. I've seen them, pull out tough games against TCU. And I've also seen them, have that tough game against Iowa there, Kansas State. I saw them lose to the Oklahoma, in the Red River rivalry. Say that 5 times fast. Who I think could win this game is Texas. I'm going to lean towards Texas. And it's just because of the games that they're coming off of. I mean, they whooped Texas Tech last week. And how I think Texas could win is it's going to come down to Quinn Ewers. I mean, can Quinn Ewers bounce back and get, his revenge game, but then also great defense and then all-around team performance where, Texas is favored. So, but I definitely think if Texas wins and a little bit of chaos above them happens, yes, they could be that 4th team getting into the college playoff. Give me Texas 45-27. I think the Cowboys play close there in the first half, and then it starts to unravel there halfway through the third, and then the fourth, they just put on extra, no, what's the word I'm trying to look for? They just put on showman points of like, hey, we're making this win look a little bit bigger and a little bit more prettier for the committee, because even if Texas wins, it is going to take a lot for them to get in, because sitting right now, I don't think the committee would let them in. As I kind of mentioned in the Pac-12 preview, where this game has a lot of, this is the biggest game. I think this game has the most importance out of conference championship weekend. And the reason why is because I could see a scenario where both teams get in. Seriously, if Alabama wins, I could see a scenario where, win or lose, Georgia gets in. I will say, Georgia and Alabama, as we move with conference realignment and all that stuff, they got to meet in the regular season. They seriously do. It's the home and home series needs to happen. I don't know who needs to hear that or how that needs to get done. Alabama and Georgia cannot play only once a year. They need to play more than once a year. Truthfully, a lot of people would look at it, this is the national championship. If you look at it, there's just so much history in this game. I mean, you got the national championships, you got the SEC meetups, just there's a lot riding on this game. The last meeting was the national championship, Keely Ringo called game, sent it to the house on a pick 6. I think there's a lot of revenge in sight for Alabama, and there's a lot of, okay, we got to get these boys. And it's a totally different Bulldogs team too. Like Stetson Bennett's not there anymore. It's a whole new offense. Cook went to the NFL. Bowers is still there, McConkey's still there, but some of those key wide receivers that were in that run have been traded. No, they entered the transfer portal. They're also missing a lot of key defensive players that got drafted to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, it's 2 different squads this time around, but the impact is still the same. I've watched a lot of Georgia games this year. I've watched almost all of the Alabama games, and so it's like, yes, I was there when they barely beat South Florida. Milroe got benched and people were like, oh, this guy sucks. But then mysteriously 6-7 weeks later, after he has, a 4 or 5 touchdown performance, it's like, okay, wait a minute, this guy's good. Alabama's figured it out. And it's like, Alabama always had it figured out. They just needed to work out the kinks. And it's like, yeah, they got beat by Texas in week 2. But that's because Quinn Ewers is a dude, and Texas has had a phenomenal season. Now, I will say the committee has shown kind of their hand where, they have not moved from the 8th spot. And I'm not trying to vouch for Alabama and say, oh, they've got to get in. But they've done this to themselves where if Alabama wins, they got to be in. Because if Alabama wins, but we keep Alabama out and we drop Georgia out, That's a college playoff without an SEC team. Are you kidding me? The committee would be idiots to not have that. Like, I think, oh my gosh, the uproar that would have if there is no SEC team in the college playoff. They've run themselves into a unique situation, because if there's a 12-1 Alabama team that's an SEC champion, they got to get in. They just have to. But all of that's going to be wiped away, and nobody's going to worry about it if Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs show up and they move to 13-0, and they would stay at the number 1 seed. There wouldn't be any debate on, oh, should we move Michigan to 1? Should we move Washington up to 1 after beating Oregon? There would be no debate on it. Georgia would be the number 1 team. Here comes the moment of truth, though. Who do I think is going to win? I got to roll with Alabama. So back when they met in the 2021 SEC Championship, I was rolling with Alabama. They beat up on Stetson Bennett and the boys, and they just walked all over them. But then they had a rematch, and then they met in the national championship, and I was like, I cannot bet against Nick Saban. Yes, they're meeting again, and there's that stat of teams that meet twice in the same season, the outcome is the same, and it's especially different the third time around, because we've seen it happen in other sports leagues like the NBA, NHL, NFL, where by the third time that team meets them, usually it goes the opposite way. Well, that happened. They met in the national championship. Georgia won. In this scenario, Carson Beck is not what Stetson Bennett is. That Georgia defense, while being one of the best in the league, they're not the Georgia defense of old. They're missing a lot of those key pieces that went off to the NFL. This is going to be a chess match between Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. And I think whichever quarterback plays better, and personally I think Milroe is a better quarterback, that is who's going to win. This is, yes, going to turn into a defensive game, but then at the end of the day, it's going to have to be the quarterback who can get the first down. Who's going to be the quarterback, like how Jalen Hurts was a few years ago against Georgia when Tua went down? Who's going to be the quarterback that gets that game-winning drive? And it's that simple. So I'm going to roll with Alabama, 24-21. If it's not a close game, usually the games are a blowout. And if it's going to be a blowout, give me Alabama 35-23, 24, because when they are close, these games are close, but when they're not close, they are blowouts. I don't bet against Nick Saban ever, even when they are the underdogs in this game against the number 1 team. And rankings aside, I don't think rankings matter. It's Georgia versus Alabama. It's going to be a good game. And so I think if Alabama wins, I think they could get the number 3 spot at the highest. But again, with how this plays out, and personally how I see it right now, with my prediction of Alabama winning, I would say that Alabama jumps to number 3, and Georgia falls from number 1 to number 4. And the reason why I say that is because things will work itself out, where teams will win and teams will lose, and they'll find a way where it will just work itself out. But I don't think a team that set the record for most consecutive wins in a row, Georgia with 29, and with their ranked wins, and with how they've been sitting on the top of the rankings at number 1, and they've been the number 1 team all year. They've had an undefeated season. I don't think that you can take a team who is back-to-back national champions, and with one loss against Alabama, whether close or spread, in this SEC championship game, I don't see how the committee could take a 1 seed and just not invite them at all, and have them be the 5th seed, and then have, Florida State be in over them with a backup quarterback. Have a debate if Ohio State can jump in and take their spot. No, the debate is over. Like, win or loss, Georgia's going in. Now the question is, can they beat Alabama and keep Alabama out? But the committee has only backed themselves into this corner, and they got to figure it out, and the game's got to be played. So we'll just see. So for the Michigan versus Iowa Big Ten championship game, let's just get the elephant out of the room. Like, yes, Michigan is clearly the overdogs here. Like, there are no such thing as underdogs. Like, there's an overdog here. Like, oh gosh, I don't know where I read it, but like, they are a 21-point favorite in this one. And if you look at the track record of who the Wolverines have played this year, Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They've thumped teams. Now, again, these teams weren't good teams. Like, they were teams hovering around 500 or under 500. So, yeah, of course, it's going to look impressive when you beat down on Michigan State or Nebraska. Iowa has 10 wins. They have found a way to win, which I will give them the positive of that. Their history, if you just look at it quickly, Michigan has won the last 3 times that they've met. This is also including back in 2021 when they played in the Big Ten championship game. And the point differential is very noticeable. Like, it's been a blowout every single time. Some of the games that I've seen for Iowa, I was like, okay, here comes that Penn State game. This was very early in the season. You know, Cade McNamara is going to show up. They're going to get a solid road win. That many points. It was tough. Like, I heard about it because I was like, I cannot watch this game. These games are boring. So I'd watch the highlights and be like, yeah, I didn't miss much. ESPN has wanted to highlight them. Yeah, you know, saw the Penn State game, saw the Rutgers game, saw the Maryland game, and recently the Ohio State game. And so Michigan, oh my gosh, they're coming off of all that momentum after beating Ohio State. And so I think this is a very dangerous team to play. Let's be real. The reason why is because Michigan is just that much better of a team. I will say this, though. If it is a low-scoring game, Iowa might have a chance. Like, if they make this a defensive battle, Iowa's comfortable with playing close games. Michigan is not. Even in these last 3 years where Michigan has just dominated everybody and been one of the top premier programs in college football, Michigan can't play the close games. When they do, they get blown out. Look at the TCU game, look at the Georgia game, look at the Michigan State game back in 2021. And then a fun kind of storyline back when I was thinking about like my 2023 predictions and stuff. Like, this is back when I was like, look at the storylines of, you know, if Clemson bounces back again and gets to the college playoff, Caleb Williams goes back-to-back on Heisman's. One that I did think about, truthfully, was Cade McNamara having revenge against Michigan, where if Michigan and Iowa play in the Big Ten championship, you know, if Iowa's 8-4 or 9-3 and stuff, because I didn't think they'd have the most decent season. But how fun would it be if he has the chance to upset Michigan and keep them from going to the playoff? Like, if Michigan was a 1-loss or a 2-loss team going into this weekend, it's not going to happen this time. He and Eric All, you know, the ex-Wolverines, they're both injured for this game. Sadly, no revenge story this season, but maybe for next season. We never know. I had Michigan going 10-2. I had Iowa going 10-2. But my preview for the Big Ten Championship was Iowa versus Michigan State. And in that game, yes, I had Iowa winning the Big Ten Championship. Like, this preseason, I thought the Hawkeyes would do really well. Then the season played out, and man, it's just been tough. Like, these boys, something's going to click, and they'll find it. And I just read something where Cade McNamara is going to come back for another season. And so maybe the 2024 season is going to be a little bit better. I don't know. But here's the thing. In the end, this game still needs to be played. The whole world is rooting for the Wolverines here because they know the Wolverines, they got this one in the bag. It's the perfect scenario for Iowa to get an upset. Now, if Iowa does win, because this happened last year, USC lost, TCU lost. If this situation happens where Iowa does win, does Michigan still get into the college playoff? I believe yes. I believe they would probably drop to 4. Some other crazy stuff would have to happen. Washington would have to lose also. Florida State would have to lose. A lot of these other teams would have to lose for Michigan to not drop so far that they're out. That's how I see that. But anyways, that's why I'm winning. So for the ACC prediction, where we have Louisville at Florida State for the ACC championship game, Florida State is sitting at number 4. Simple answer would be, if Florida State wins, are they in? Absolutely. Why would you punish a whole team because their star quarterback is out? 13-0 and they miss the college football playoff? I wouldn't blame fans for being like, okay, this is rigged. The last 10 meetings between Louisville, again, they've had different teams throughout the years. 5-5 split right down the middle, so this has the makings of, okay, this could be an upset. This has upset written all over it. The Louisville games that I have seen this year, I saw them beat Notre Dame. Late drama against NC State. They had a comeback. They only won by a field goal. I was driving bus that night, and so I was able to watch that game on my phone, have some pizza, and I'm like, hey, Friday night football game for college? Sure, why not? So I watched that game. You know, they have a few blemishes, like that Pitt loss, but then last week against Kentucky, where Kentucky came in and just shocked the world. I've kind of alluded to it where every game needs to be played for these last 2 weeks. Yeah, they dropped a simple one against the Wildcats. Florida State games I've seen, I feel like there's a handful of teams, and we see them now in the top 5, top 6, like from Texas and Washington to Oregon and now Florida State, where this team's on the rise. Let's show them on TV more. So, we saw the LSU beat down in week 1. I saw the tough game when they played Boston College. That was a really tough road game. I saw the Clemson win. I thought Clemson was going to win that game. But it's interesting to see how Florida State's season went versus how Clemson's went after that game. Again, that set the tone for the rest of the season for both programs equally. The Duke game, the Pitt game, a handful of games that I've seen. And from the handful of games that I've seen, you could predict it easily and be like, yeah, of course Florida State's going to win this game. Here's the thing, though. You got to throw all the stats and everything just out the window. And it is because Florida State is missing their key guy that got them there. With having a backup in there, I am not saying that they're not qualified or ready for it, which in fact, there's kind of a feeling like this is the 2014 Ohio State team. Like, I think it'd be a fun full circle moment. And so that's why I wouldn't necessarily sleep on the Seminoles overall. History's rewriting itself where, yep, star quarterback goes down, next man up kind of mentality. I think that this game is going to be pretty ugly, low-scoring game, just considering the games that both of these teams are coming off of, where Florida State struggled against the Gators. I think with how Louisville lost, and they lost their chances of the college playoff if they played their cards right, I think that goes into effect of how this ACC game is going to roll out, where they come with a little bit of revenge, and they come mad and angry off of that loss, and they just thump the Seminoles, kind of. Not a real thumping, because I do think this is going to be kind of a low-scoring, ugly game, but it's one of those things where if Louisville's defense can keep the Seminoles' offense contained, we got a ball game here, and Louisville stands every chance to beat them. And so I think the better quarterback will win. Yes, I'm leaning towards Plummer, but simply put, like, if FSU wins, they are in. Like, it's that simple. So, but that's my prediction about that. So I'm going to take the Louisville Cardinals 20-14. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.